Crying is big business in emotionally repressed Japan.
Welcome to Plain English, the podcast that goes at the right speed for English language learners. Listen now and read the transcript online at plainenglish.com. Now, here's Jeff, your host for today's episode.
Hi, everyone. Welcome back. This is Plain English, the podcast for learning English at just the right speed. Well, when I saw this story last weekend, I knew immediately that I had to do an episode on it. Japanese entrepreneurs are hosting facilitated crying sessions. And not just at home either. Some companies are getting in on the action. Just think, a facilitated crying session with all of your coworkers. Stay tuned to learn a little more about that. This is episode number 115, which means that you can find the full transcript online at plainenglish.com/115. As always, our transcripts include instant translations of all the hard words and phrases from English to Spanish, Portuguese, Japanese, Chinese, French, and Italian, all for you at plainenglish.com/115, plainenglish.com/115. Have you tried Mosalingua yet? I'll tell you more about it in a few minutes, but they're a great partner of ours here at Plain English, and they have a huge variety of English learning resources, videos, audios, articles, and a large library of English words and phrases, all arranged in a user-friendly online environment. You can try it out for free, but I know you'll like all the resources they have. Check them out at plainenglish.com/learn, LEARN, plainenglish.com/learn. Crying once a week is the secret to a stress-free life. At least that's according to the headline of an article at the World Economic Forum. And they're taking this advice seriously in Japan with Ruikatsu sessions. That means tear-seeking sessions. And it seems that more than a few entrepreneurs in Japan are attaching themselves to this trend. One of these leading businessmen is Hiroki Terai, who started a business called Ikimesu Danshi, which translates roughly to, and this is not a joke, handsome weeping boys. Mr. Terai first latched onto this idea when he was researching divorce in Japan. He found that after a divorce, women didn't have an effective way of coping with the trauma since they were too overwhelmed by the legal and practical effects of undoing a marriage. Mr. Terai started his business as a way to help women cry after getting a divorce. His business has expanded now, and he provides cry therapy services to people looking for the emotional release that they don't get elsewhere in their daily lives. Think of it as like getting a massage only for your emotions. Here's what they do. A tear courier. A courier is like a messenger. A tear courier shows a small group of women an emotional film that is intended to get them to cry together in a group. As the tears start to flow, and again, this is written down, it's not a joke. As the tears start to flow, good-looking men dab their tears away. They then talk about it for a bit, and the session is over. The attendees say they feel better afterward. There was even a documentary film called Crying with the Handsome Man that explains this odd cultural trend in Japan. In the film, one of the tear couriers says that people do not usually express their emotions naturally in Japanese society. A lot of the customers are stressed out and find that they can't openly cry at home or at work. So now grown men and grown women are getting together to watch melancholy films, listen to sad songs, and just have a good cry together. One unexpected challenge has been finding material that's universally sad to all people. The attendees range in age from 20 to 80. So what might be really sad for one generation might not do the trick for another generation. All joking aside, there are some real scientific benefits. Junko Umihara, a professor at the Nippon Medical School, told the Japan Times that crying is an act of self-defense against accumulating stresses. By letting your emotions out, you can reduce the accumulated stress in your life. It's a way of pressing the reset button on some of the accumulated emotions. It also releases chemicals in your brain that relieve both physical and emotional pain. In an acutely stressful situation, it also automatically slows down your breathing, which is also a way to calm down. One of the tear couriers in Japan says that crying is more effective than laughing or even sleeping in reducing stress. An international study of people in over 30 countries found that participants felt better after shedding some tears. Most mental health counselors encourage their patients to cry when they feel the need to. Many countries have only recently begun to prioritize mental health, and Japan is no exception. Conditions like depression, addiction, and anxiety are often never diagnosed and therefore never treated effectively. I read that over 90% of suicides are the result of depression or another mental health condition, but so many people never get treatment. Japan has historically had one of the highest suicide rates, and that may be because of the stigma associated with depression and mental health. A study from 2016 said that people in Japan are least likely of all the people in the world to tell their employer about a mental health issue. In 2015, companies in Japan with over 50 employees were required to check the stress levels of their employees. And that's when they started to host lectures on the power of crying. So So this all makes sense to me. I was just a little confused by the handsome man part. I wasn't quite sure what that had to do with the emotional benefits of crying. But I guess if you're a female in Japan and you want your tears dabbed by someone, and you have the choice between an average-looking guy or a handsome man, I guess you'll choose the handsome one, all else equal. You know, we're coming up on the new year in a couple of days, and that means it's time for New Year's resolutions. If your New Year's resolution is to start your own business, you may have just landed on the perfect idea. Bring the weeping clubs to your country. I just don't know how well that will fare in Latin America. Something tells me that this idea may not translate as well in that part of the world. Have you been to a crying session before? Have you had your tears dabbed by a handsome man? Let me know. We have a lot of listeners in Japan, and I'm dying to know if any of our plain English listeners have had the pleasure or displeasure of attending a group crying session before. Send me a note to Jeff, Jeff, at plainenglish.com, and I'll share your experiences on a future episode. Not that there's any stigma here among friends at Plain English, but I'd be happy to relate your comments on a first name basis only. Before we get to the phrasal verb for today, I wanted to say thank you to our partner, Mosalingua. Mosalingua is an innovative technology company that helps you learn English. Actually, they have lots of languages, but English is one of their most popular. And it's easy to see why. Our friends at Mosalingua have helped over 6 million language learners over the years. Their online platform is fun to use, and most importantly, it is designed with the latest language learning science in mind. Now, you might not be an expert at spaced repetition or all the other scientific ways of learning a language, but you don't have to be. They've done all that research for us, and they've designed a series of programs to help us learn languages. I say us because I use Mosalingua resources in Spanish, and you can too in English or any of their other languages by going to plainenglish.com/learn, LEARN. And if you don't want to commit right away, you can sign up for a free trial, but I think you'll get a lot out of it. There are lots of good videos and audios on the platform too, so you can search for the really sad ones and get a good personalized individual crying session in at the same time as you practice your English. Kill 2 birds with 1 stone, right? And that's all for you at plainenglish.com/learn, our partner Mosalingua, plainenglish.com/learn. Okay, today we've got a great phrasal verb, latch onto. Here's how you heard it earlier in this episode. Hiroki Tarai latched onto the health benefits of crying when he started his company that encourages customers to cry together while watching sad movies. He latched onto the idea. That means he attached himself to it. He grabbed onto the idea. He found the idea and he wasn't going to let it go. He latched onto it and started a whole business around this one concept. When you latch onto an idea or a concept, you become very interested in it and you attach yourself to it. You don't let it go. Now, that can be either good or bad. If you're an entrepreneur like Mr. Turai and you latch onto an idea, that can be a good thing. You found your one big idea and you're not giving it up. It can sometimes be a criticism, though. It's often said that the news media latches onto the most sensational stories, even if they're not the most important ones that day. Other times it's neither good nor bad, but a fact of life. Do you remember the story about the young soccer players stuck in a cave in Thailand? The media latched onto that story, myself included, right? We talked about that in episode 66 at plainenglish.com/66. The media latched onto that story because it was dramatic and, coincidentally, it happened right around the World Cup of Soccer. Were there more important stories in the world? Maybe, but the public latched onto that story too. Most of us in the audience wanted to know what was going on. Sometimes a politician can latch onto an issue and not let it go. A certain American politician has latched onto the idea of a wall at the American border with Mexico. A certain Mexican politician has latched onto the idea of canceling an airport under construction. A certain Brazilian politician has latched onto the idea of giving greater access to guns to prevent violence. Good, bad, or indifferent, these politicians have latched onto these ideas. They have become interested in them, attached themselves to these issues, and they're not letting them go. That's all for today's episode. Don't forget our partner Mosalingua at plainenglish.com/learn. And if you'd like to get even more out of Plain English, make sure you join our email list by going to plainenglish.com/mail, MAIL. You'll get links to the English articles I use to prepare the show, plus an extra English word or phrase. plainenglish.com/mail. JR and I will be back on Monday with a new episode. See you then.